The market doesn't know what keeps you up at night. It doesn't know when you want to retire, and it doesn't know how old you are. The simple truth is, the market doesn't care. But if you care, you've tuned into the right place. You're listening to Investor Resources, bringing clarity to the confusing world of finance. Here are your hosts of Investor Resources, Don Creech and Perry Sykes.
I'm Don Creech.
And I'm Perry Sykes, and welcome to the Investor Resources Podcast. We'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to our podcast so you'll keep getting the newest versions that come out. And if you're enjoying this, we'd appreciate it if you pass this on to your friends, your family, your coworkers, and help us get the word out about what's going on here.
One of the big pushes by governments around the world has been to get us off of fossil fuels and move us to green energy. Generally, that means wind and solar. Well, there are a couple of problems. One is the wind doesn't blow all the time, and two, the sun doesn't shine all the time.
Both issues, yeah.
Minor problem if you want to
Yeah.
get power to the house.
Ugh.
There's actually a more recent push, particularly with the demand for data centers, to generate consistent 24/7 power, reliable power that
Right.
is affordable. And it looks like the green energy solution is not solar or wind, but it's nuclear. The new mini nuclear plants can be built virtually next door to a data center, and you don't have to worry about transmission lines being blown over in a storm, knocked over by trees. Here in the Northwest, we had
Oh,
major transmission lines, the
yep.
ones that bring power in from the eastern side of the state, destroyed with this last storm that came through. So data centers, which you think of Google and Microsoft and Apple. I mean, they've got to push for data centers. They need a lot of power, and solar is not their answer. And
It's
solar
not going to be.
actually
Yeah.
it isn't the answer, even in China, where they have a very high adoption rate. I think China has done more to adopt solar and convert from, in their case, mostly coal, than any other country. They are way ahead of the game on adoption. I don't know what they do when the sun goes down because the battery problem is still a real problem.
It's against the law to be outside anyway. Yeah, you just gotta lock your door and stay inside. But they're having big trouble in China with their solar industry. The largest solar corp in China lost $740 million in the first half of 2024. 740 million in 6 months with record installation rates. They've never installed more solar power ever in the history of the country, and they are rapidly going broke doing it.
So there's basically an overcapacity problem. This particular company, I don't know if it's the correct Chinese pronunciation, but I call it Longi, Longi.
That's close
That's
enough.
that's my best effort on it. Basically figured out how to make some significant technological process in the development of silicon chips. And they just basically wiped out a whole lot of traditional competition because of their advanced technology. And so they were doing really well for a couple of years. But we've ended up with, as the global economy slowed down, we've had the tariff debate is back up on the table, whether or
Mhm.
not they could build ship chips, solar panels in the United States. So they can build them in Mexico and ship them in. All these questions are up in the air, and how are they going to be resolved? What basically has happened is that a joint venture with the U.S. company has made sense, and actually. In Ohio, they put to work 1,500 people by putting together a joint venture that makes solar panels. The problem is the ones built in the United States are a lot more expensive than the ones in the rest of the world. Well, what do you want to pay for it? You want to
That's it.
pay at a level that keeps jobs in the country, or you want to forget about the jobs and import Chinese stuff?
And
Well,
that's
you
really
know,
that's the problem in China too. The problem is the government of China will get behind some renewable energy, will support it immensely, and then local governments do the same thing because they want a big win locally on the business side. They all start producing the same thing, and then all of a sudden there's this massive overcapacity inside the country, and because you want your business to stay in business, you start cutting prices. And you cut them and cut them and cut them, and the business gets so cutthroat, all of a sudden, no one's making a dime. And then you're trying to just stay in business. Well, we just want market share then. And then you can't even support that, and then you're bankrupt. And then the government will start something else somewhere else. So they keep getting whipsawed by the government saying, well, we're all going to do this, and then we're, oh no, stop that, we're all going to do this other thing, and they cannot continue. And so now they're saying, well, the US needs this technology, you guys need it, and you're going to need China, or you're never going to be successful at this. And now with the new administration coming in and saying nobody's dumping their technology on this country, you're going to have to pay if you want to play here in the largest economy on the planet. And so China is really starting to look at that and think, wow, we really could be in trouble here. We're already losing money hand over fist just internally. And if we lose external support for these products, there may be nowhere to go. It may just dry up and go away.
the chairman of Longi is a very innovative guy. He and
Yep.
another buddy from college, basically some engineers, came up with the idea, put this company together, and the current financial problem is not unknown to him. He actually expected and predicted last year that there would be an oversupply of
Right.
product, which is going to create financial problems. So he had forewarning that this was coming, but he's still stuck with the reality that the marketplace isn't paying enough because of this cutthroat competition. And this is kind of like the in our business, the fight for assets under management is a process of
Correct.
cutting fees. It's you cut fees. Who can survive the lowest possible fee rate? That's the same thing that's going on here. It
Right.
all also illustrates the problems that are created by government running like an
Boy,
industry or trying
absolutely.
to influence, play favorites. We like
Yep.
this idea, so we're going to pay people to go do this without necessarily understanding the economics of it or even whether there's a demand. I mean, that same thing applies to electric vehicles. We've been subsidizing electric vehicles, but when the subsidies go away, they sit on the car lots. Nobody wants to pay for them at the cost of producing the vehicle today. And so that is where free markets actually have a benefit, even though it may end up with some company having a monopoly for a given period of time. At least it's good use of capital, this productive use of capital with the product that actually has potential and is in demand instead of
Right.
creating something that we basically bribe people to take.
That's the problem. It's the artificial market created that cannot perpetuate itself. And when you have a government pushing that, you do get a lot of participation, and then all of a sudden you have the bottom drop out when the country moves on, and there wasn't a real organic market there. That's what happens when governments don't really understand business, and that's what's happening right now in China. And Longy, their stock price was down 80% this year. 80%. That's tough. And they think they're going to be one of the survivors. They think they're going to be able to soldier on. So they're hoping they're going to be one of the few that comes out the other side, and then they may have a more sustainable market. In the meantime, all the rest of them, they're going to go to zero, and there's going to be nothing left. And you don't need to artificially inflate a market to get participation. In a real capital market, capital flows to where it's treated best. And if there's money to be made there, that's where it's going to show up. And it's that government intervention that can get it so wrong. And then eventually the dollars always tell the truth, and the business always tells the truth. And then there's not enough there. And those companies dry up and blow away. And we hate to see that here in China. Is happening on a much larger scale. And like you said, Don, they even saw it coming and they went anyway because there's not really an alternative. It's in their country. They're going to have to do that. That's the game you have to play and hope you make it to the next round by not going bankrupt in the first round when there's the artificial business that gets created.
Well, one of the benefits is that we can say, thankfully, we were not able to invest in that company here because there probably would have
Correct.
been investors and they'd be crying on their solar cells today. But
Right.
part of the innovation probably gives Mr. Longy the ability to actually adapt to whatever's still coming downstream in this industry. And one of the things that he did was be able to make thinner crystals than had ever been done before
Right.
by figuring out one that a diamond coated metal wire saw would work and how to make the diamond coated wire saw that would cut the crystal material
Right.
into silicon so they could treat them and make chips out of them. I mean,
Thinner and thinner. Right.
he's an extremely innovative guy and has dominated that market in China and of course around the world. He's a major provider wherever. In 2020 he installed more solar modules than the entire production of the United States.
Think
I mean,
about that.
he
Yeah.
dominates it.
Yeah. That's
So
a lot. Yeah.
this industry isn't going to go away, but like all industries where you get latecomers jumping into production and have government incentives to do so, you end up with too much capacity and you're going to end up with losers. Um, what comes to mind is Solyndra. Remember Solyndra
Oh,
under
sure.
Obama? Oh,
Yes. Yes.
we think you have a great company and great management. Here's a couple $1 billion. Just go to work. Which of course ended up in bankruptcy because there was no there there.
Again, they did go to work, but only until the 2 billion ran out. Then they were broke because they didn't actually produce anything, which is again, that's the government intervention. It's why free markets are so important. It's why it's so important to let the free market lead where that goes and then follow that. And if you're an innovator, produce something that's going to attract the capital. But when the government gets in the way, it really does cloud the water, and it makes it difficult to figure out who the real players are, and it makes it difficult to figure out at this point who the survivors are going to be, if you're going to try to make this industry sustainable going forward.
Well, one of the ways the U.S. government does get involved with, particularly with Chinese, but other Asian countries as well, is the use of child labor.
Oh,
And Mr. Longy has assured, and I'm sure it's an ongoing process to assure investigators that they are not using child labor. Now, I don't know. All I can say is that's his claim. They don't use child
correct.
labor. But he's competing, even if he doesn't, he's competing with companies in his own country who do.
That do. Yep. Yep.
And how do we separate that when the stuff gets piled together on the dock to get shipped to the United States? Or what will soon be happening is in Mexico and Peru, who are both building out ports of entry that are going to be mammoths to compete with Los Angeles and Long Beach ports of entry. They're going to handle big container ships, and they'll
Yep.
be using AI to handle the processing of that to get it
Of
offloaded
course.
on trucks and shipped wherever else it's supposed to go.
There you go.
The world is changing, so it's not just solar. But we had a session on artificial intelligence. It shows up with just these. How do you handle shipping containers? That's part of the reason that the we had the port strikes earlier in the year back on the East Coast. We
Yep.
simply had the longshoremen do not want automated cranes.
It's like not going to happen. It's already here. It's gonna dominate that industry because of the level of efficiency, and it's something that needs to be implemented, and it's going to be regardless of how much people try to put that to the side. Again, that's another market-driven thing that will overtake all opposition because it's going to be so much more efficient.
It's a blue collar job that's going to be affected by that. But it's
True.
already, if we take a bigger union, which is the auto workers, uh, AI is already running those assembly lines. I mean, you
Yeah.
still have workers on them, but you don't have the workers that you had a couple of decades ago.
Correct.
The computers are running the assembly of the car. I mean, I've watched the lug nuts go on five at a time.
Right.
faster than one person can get one lug nut even lined up on the threads correctly. So
There you go. There you
that,
go. And there's going to be more and more of that to come. Yeah,
it is. It's the next new thing that's going to change our lives in ways we do not understand. Uh,
definitely.
we're going to touch on more of these subjects in our upcoming podcasts. If you aren't subscribing to them, do so now. There's a button right down below the screen here. Click on that so that you get notified when we do our next one. If you like this content, you probably have friends, family, and coworkers who have similar interests. We'd appreciate it if you would pass on the link so that they know about it also. We also do a monthly stock market update webinar on Saturday, the first Saturday of the month. Go to our website. The website's on this final screen here. Register there. If you can't attend on Saturday morning, we'll send you the replay link and you'll find out what we're looking at as far as current conditions in the market. Thanks for being with us. Remember to subscribe. Look forward to our next podcast. Have a great day.